Hi, everyone. Let's get started. Welcome and welcome back to Cafe Oleh. My name is Jay. Here at Cafe Oleh, with Nefesh B'Nefesh, we go over the everyday Hebrew you need in Israel to succeed, whether that is learning to read and pay your utility bills, uh, going grocery shopping and reading nutritional labels, keeping up with the news, striking up a conversation, dating, flirting, job interviewing, complaining, all the everyday things you do in your native language and country of origin here in Israel in modern Hebrew. As always, we'd like to hear from you what topics you'd like us to cover. Please write to us by email at hebrew@nbn.org.il with any questions you have, and in particular, any requests for classes you'd like. This system only works because it's powered by participants like you, telling us what you need to learn in order to feel more secure as a future or current Israeli citizen. So we want to hear from you. If you're joining us live on Zoom, you can write to us in the chat with any questions, comments, or requests you may like. You can also check all of our previous lessons up on youtube.com. That's youtube.com if you haven't heard of the website before. If you haven't, lucky you, because I definitely am addicted to it. You type in Cafe Oleh, you'll see a playlist with all of our previous lessons. We have more than 100 lessons up there with the attached spreadsheets, over 13,000 views there. It's all there for you, absolutely free. Just one other piece of housekeeping for those of you who are joining us live on Zoom. The Q&A is there for you to ask questions about the specific class we're about to start. The chat is for anything else, but we do ask, owing to we are currently at 254 participants, which is absolutely amazing. We do ask that you keep the non-class or Hebrew-related chat in the chat box to a minimum. We've received a number of queries about this, particularly people talking over me apparently, or talking about what I'm talking about in the chat, and it's very disruptive to people. First off, you can click off hide chat previews by clicking on the arrow just to the right of the chat icon here on Zoom on live. And second, even though we are 266 people on this call, please think of this, folks, as a lecture or as a classroom where you wouldn't be talking over the teacher, I hope. If that's your style, you do you, but it does interrupt other people's ability to concentrate. So please keep the personal chat to a minimum if you're joining us live on Zoom. With that, let's get started. Today's class, we talk about a lot. I mention it at least once a week. You all ask me this question almost every week. And we finally turned it into an actual class, which is why you should not use Google Translate. And I talk about this every single week. I've even shown in the past alternatives, and we're going to do a deeper dive into those alternatives, but also talk about why we use a dictionary in the first place. I mean, you all can tell me, you've all learned probably another language in your life. And at some point you had a dictionary to go back and forth between your native language and the language you're learning. I certainly remember that growing up, either learning Hebrew or Spanish or later in years in Arabic. And there are certain points when you learn a language, you have to use a dictionary. You're even encouraged to do it in a test. It's usually at a more advanced stage, and it's clear why you're using a dictionary. A dictionary isn't going to teach you grammar. It's not going to teach you how to use the language. It's going to give you individual words, maybe some expressions. So when you get to a certain stage, it's okay to use a dictionary in a test in a formal classroom setting, because all you're doing is looking up individual words to fill in the gaps. But when you're learning a language, and most of the people, many of the people in our class here on Cafe Oleh are at a beginner or intermediate level, you're learning the language. Okay, and in learning the language, using a dictionary all the time is, number one, not always going to be helpful. And number two, it's also knowing which dictionary to use. And that brings us immediately, let's just cut straight to the case, show everyone's favorite thing. Rena, if you can hear me, if you can change the settings on the Zoom call so that only one person can share at the same time, so I can also share sound in a little bit. Okay, actually, there it is. I can do that. Never mind. Never mind, I figured it out. Okay, we're gonna cut right to everyone's favorite topic, Google Translate. Google Translate has been around for at least a decade, more than that. It is based on a specific type of computer learning system. It's called neural machine learning, where basically it takes in information that's readily available online, in particularly what we call these data banks, data sets of words. And Google Translate is particularly good for certain languages. First off, it's really good for the official languages of the United Nations because part of its database are the transcripts from United Nations proceedings, and there are the official languages of the United Nations. So those languages like English, French, Arabic, Russian, Chinese are really good for this. There's some other ones because they have large databases, especially from the European Union. But most of their languages, it's not good. And it gets even harder when these are languages that with fewer speakers. It's harder with individual words, ironically. And it's also where I'm going to show you the limits of it in a second. Part of the reason I go on a rant about Google Translate all the time is because I know all of you use it. It used to be dictionaries, you had to get a book. It was very to find something online. And when there were the initial dictionaries online, they were very expensive. Okay. Google Translate was very much a revolution in how we decipher other languages. And it's important to understand a dictionary in terms of deciphering something rather than learning a language. I'd like to think all of us are on this in this class because we're learning a language, not deciphering Hebrew. If the point of you being in this class, folks, is to decipher Hebrew rather than to learn Hebrew, I'll save you 52 minutes of the rest of this class and you can watch the recording at your convenience. But we're here to learn, not to decipher. And that's where the difference is, and that's why Google Translate is bad. To show you why Google Translate is bad, I'm going to show you an example that you've probably all seen multiple times, or you've seen some example of this. And it's to also share a little bit about myself. So in my everyday life, I have my own company in cross-cultural communication strategy. Part of what I do here with Nefesh B'Nefesh is a component of that. Normally, I help people with their English, whether it's presentation skills, pitching skills, writing skills, whatever it may be, but especially native Israelis, native Hebrew speakers, and other people, how to get to a larger audience, also using social media. We've all seen examples like these, right? There are the Facebook groups that make fun of English in Israel and in other countries. We've seen signage like this throughout Israel all the time. Folks, the same cause for this bad English is the same cause for why you get frustrated when you type in words in Google Translate. Everyone is using the same tool, and the tool is inherently wrong and flawed. Right? And I'm going to show you a great example. These are some classic ones. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I am going to go through the one at the top left because this one really irritates me because it was printed out onto metal, right? It was etched into metal as a signage at the Ramada Resort here in Hadera. Not here in Hadera, I'm in Tel Aviv, but here in Israel, right? At their buffet, whether it's for breakfast or for whatever meal it is, they have on the menu in Hebrew, bulekas tapuchei adama. In English, someone took the time to get this signage in metal etched to say potatoes filled borax. Why does it say that? Because of Google Translate. It is not human error, it is Google Translate. And let me show you how that works. If I go to Google Translate, okay, I go to Google Translate and I type in the exact same thing. Burekas tapuchei adama, and as we talked about, it is an abbreviation. I can also write it out. It's not going to change anything. Borax, comma, a potato. Okay. Google Translate works by what it sees online, and it doesn't make natural inferences between things. So even though if it knows that tapuchei adama, that taf pe vav Gilshaim Aleph stands for potato, it doesn't make the connection between the first word, which should be bulekas and potato. Instead, it's borax, comma, a potato. First off, borax, the salt, is spelled usually with an aleph in the middle. It doesn't matter. Google Translate does this. Even with the oral, the part where you can put in voice commands, right? I'll show you right now. I'm going to talk instead of type it in. Bulekas tapuchei adama. Right? Potato borax. Google Translate is not built to understand something like this. Okay, it understands the most basic of terms possible. People like Google Translate for a lot of reasons. First off, it was one of the first and biggest on the scene, and that it's free, and that you can put in up to 5,000 characters. That's a really big deal. I get that. I get that, folks. You're reading a big paragraph and it's overwhelming, and you just plug in the whole thing and you hope that you get the gist of it. And it's true. For most of the languages, the big languages, and Hebrew's one of them, the average is 50% accuracy. And I've said that all along because it's true, and it's not just true for Hebrew, but for other languages. 50%. 50% is deciphering a language, not learning a language. Google Translate also has something, let's see if it shows on here. It does, here at the bottom, which says contribute. I signed up as a volunteer. I can correct this if I want to. That's another inherent flaw of this product, right? It's based on volunteers writing and correcting things and then vetting other people's corrections. What if people are trying to hijack and sabotage this? What if someone went in and said, no, wait, bulekas tapuchei adama is potato borax, right? And they said it as a matter of fact because it's online, and who needs to verify other than I'm a contributor, right? So Google Translate is not your friend. I'm going to make it even more ridiculous for you. What if I were to just search in Google the same exact engine that gives you Google Translate, bulekas tapuchei adama, even just bulekas, right? So I type it into the top, bulekas, and this part really infuriates me about Google Translate. I just do a Google search for bulekas. I get the Wikipedia article that clearly shows a picture of what it is, and the Wikipedia article that's in English. Even though I looked in Hebrew, it gives me everything that's related to bulekas, not borax. So this is how even more flawed Google Translate is. I hope this is clear to you. The same company, the same software, the same platform that gives you Google Translate gives the actual meaning of the word I just plugged in, and the translation service that's attached to it can't do this. That's how awful Google Translate is. And when you're learning a language, not deciphering a language, learning a language, these things make a difference. And maybe you're saying, bulekas is not a big deal. I can look at the pastry and know what it is. What if you've never been to Israel before and you just see a sign? What if you came here out of goodwill because you're genuinely interested in being in Israel, have no ties, and you see a sign like that? How are you supposed to decipher it if Google Translate is not our friend? And in that respect, I'm going to show you some alternatives. We've gone through many of these before. Some of these we haven't. We're going to have a whole list of them in the description of this lesson when it goes up on YouTube. But I'm going to show you the same words on the different platforms and show how much better they are. So first off is one that I know a lot of you are familiar with, is Milon Morphix. Don't worry about writing down the websites. We'll send you all of this, but it's morphix.co.il. This is one of the Hebrew dictionaries, Hebrew English dictionaries that's been around for a very long time. In addition to which, they have all sorts of great materials on their website, in addition to translation, and I'll show that to you in just a second. You can type in phrases. You can learn all sorts of other things here as well. It's got word lists, all sorts of great things, both in Hebrew and in English, in both directions. It's wonderful. Milon Morphix suffers from a few things. Actually, let me go through the pluses first. So I typed in bulekas to see what it would do. And sure enough, it gives me both. But right, this is not Google Translate. It gives me both bulekas in English and borax. Proper spelling of borax is with an aleph in the middle. But the point is, with the context, I know it's meant to be bulekas. And as opposed to Google Translate, it gives you the nikud, the dots and bars that indicate vowel sounds, bulekas, and it gives me its classification, that it's a noun, shem, and that it's this, standing for zachar. The letter zayin stands for zachar, meaning it's a masculine term. And it says in Hebrew the definition. We're going to get to that in a little bit, right? So it gives you a lot more context than Google Translate does, which is wonderful. It gives you even more information about what is bulekas, right? It gives a whole bunch of other stuff here, which is wonderful. Okay. Now, what's the problem with this website? First off, it's been around for a long time. Second, you can see how many ads are on this website. One of the things, obviously, that Google Translate has going for it is that there are no ads. This, however, is chock full of ads, and they're annoying ads, right? There's a video here. I had to press, I had to unblock ads on this website in order to access it. It's not the easiest to use. It's very clunky as a result, but at least it gives me these. And when optional, it will also give me audio. Okay, Milon Morphix is always a great option, but I have one that's even better, and I've showed it to you before. Okay, here's the next one I want to show you. This is jump straight ahead into my absolute favorite online dictionary, Context Reverso, or Reverso Context. Okay, this has been around also for, I think, over 10 years. It's originally French. Hebrew is one of the languages it supports. It also supports a whole bunch of others. Yes, it does have ads, but what makes this one different is a couple things. First off, if I were to go to the original thing of bulekas, when I type in bulekas, you see here, it gives you a couple different options, right? And I want, obviously, bulekas. It gives you a couple options, but what it immediately does, and this is really important and why I love this one, is that it gives you sample sentences with the word. Again, deciphering a language versus learning a language. We're talking about learning a language in this class and this series. This is the website you want to use as much as possible to translate individual words and expressions. And it goes both Hebrew and in English. Okay, so bulekas, yes, it's giving me borax, but it's giving me bulekas. And if I know through context I'm talking about bulekas, I can scroll over the various words and it's going to give me various examples, dugmaot. So let's say I press on this because it says achadesle dugmaot im hatama, 11 fitted, 11 examples that are specified for me. Now I have sample sentences in English and in Hebrew, and to make it even more tempting for all of you, watch this.
בורקס. יש הפרדה בין התמחות בבשר, בדגים, באוכל רחוב, במאפים מסוג בורקס או בצקי פילו.
It gives you an audio reading of the sentence, and it adds in the nikud, the dots and bars indicating vowel sounds as it's reading it out. This is an amazing tool for you when learning a language. Okay, you could type in all sorts of words here. You can put in idiomatic expressions in Hebrew and English. It is a great resource, and there is an app version. There is all sorts of other things that it gives. This is a wonderful tool. Context Reverso. Please use this one all the time. Again, we'll give you all websites. Don't worry about writing them all down, but this is the one you want, Context Reverso. Okay. It can give you all sorts of other things that is just an amazing resource and tool when you're learning Hebrew. Let me show you another one that we've also done multiple times. That's a really good one to have. Where did it go on my site? I've raved and raved about this one. This is one of my absolute favorite websites. It's pe'alim.com. Pe'alim.com is great for getting to the shoresh of a word, the root, as well as conjugating verbs. For those of you who are still going through conjugating verbs and learning the pattern of it, this is a great website. You can plug in any verb in any conjugated form, and it will give you the entire table of it. So for example, let me give you a word that I just heard on the news the other day, and I didn't quite know how to translate it. Right? But instead of being just a noun, it's a verb. First off, what's great about this website, it has a online keyboard to your right. So if you don't have a Hebrew keyboard, a physical one like I do, you can type it in. It's automatically adjusted to type in Hebrew. So you don't have to worry about it. And as you see, it also has a mobile app. Okay, but let's say I'm looking up this verb. I click go. Oh, didn't like that. Let's see if it'll let me do it again. Give it a second. Not knowing why it's taking so long. Let's do something maybe a little simpler. All right, we'll come back to it conjugating, but let me just show you some of the other features on this website because it's a really good one. For example, newly added word. Look at how words are listed here. You have the word in both full nikud as well as conjugation, transliteration. It has the root, the shoresh, the three letters that indicate, excuse me, the shoresh of the word. The part of speech, right? It deconstructs the word. So for example, the first one is a noun in the ktila pattern. We've talked about mishkalim in the past, a great past lesson on our YouTube channel. Feminine word, meaning cutlet, as in the food that you eat, right? If I were to click on katsatz, right, the root, kuf tzadi tzadi, assuming the website is going to work today, it's having some issues. That's all right. But this is a great website for you to check out because if you were to type on it, it would list all the words, including nouns and verbs, that contain the same root, the same shoresh, kuf tzadi tzadi. Okay. If it's a, as opposed to a noun or an adjective, if it's a verb, it will give you the full conjugation table: past, present, future, active, passive, participles, command, infinitive, gerund, all those wonderful things. Okay. It also has a lot of other great resources, writing with and without vowels, all sorts of other resources that are great here, listening skills, financial market vocabulary, songs, dressing, Declaration of Independence. This is a great website to use, pe'alim.com. We've gone through it multiple times before. We're going to give it one last chance before we say goodbye to it, at least for today. Okay, it's not wanting to work. That's fine. Okay, pe'alim.com is a great website. The next one I want to show you, right, is, aha. This one is going to challenge you, and in a good way. Okay, this one is, actually, before we get to the one I really want to show you, I want to show you this guy. This is Quillbot. This is one of many new translation services that claims to be powered by AI, artificial intelligence. Look what happens when I type in burekas tapuchi adama, a burger of potatoes. Burger is a brand new one for burekas. The point, though, is don't believe the hype about AI. Okay, because this is one of many AI tools that are out there, and this is how it translates. A lot of the most recent AI-powered translation services do not have Hebrew included. This one happened to be, and it also translated as wrong. By the way, the other reason why I like, Context Reverso so much, and I just want to pull that up again, is one of the things that Context Reverso does that's different than Google Translate is that it also uses a database of subtitles from movies and TV that are open access to create these sample sentences and to create more context for things like idiomatic expressions, things that don't literally translate. So a lot of what you see here might come from actual script from various films that's been translated into English or in Hebrew. And that's where these sample sentences come in. So it's an even bigger database of words for you to better understand the context of the word that's being used and what its meaning is. The next one I want to show you, this one is going to be a challenge, but it's a good challenge, is Milog. Milog is a Hebrew to Hebrew dictionary. This is a straight up dictionary for Hebrew by Hebrew in Hebrew. And this is really good, again, because if the point is to learn and not decipher, it's also about immersing yourself in the language. And this is a great one. You can type in any word here. Sometimes there is English translation, as you see at the top left, and it will give you, if there are other words there, it gives you, again, the word with the nikud. If it's got audio, it'll let you hear it, right? And then it gives you a definition in Hebrew.
בורקס.
See, it said burekas, right? It says here, ma'achal ha'asui mibatzek alim o batzek parich memula, excuse me, lerov begvina, tapuchei adama upitriot, right? It gives you a definition as it would appear in a Hebrew dictionary for Hebrew speakers, just like there are English dictionary for English speakers, right? And it goes through all sorts of other things in here with regards to information. A lot of it is Wikipedia sourced. A lot of it is, there's all sorts of other information. For example, if I look up a word like I tried to do on Google Translate, let's try. If we put in a verb. Okay, we put in a verb, lilmod, right? It gives me all the grammatical information I need about it. Third person past tense singular, which is the default, lamad. Shem poal, the name of the verb, meaning infinitive verb. The shoresh is lamed mem daled. Binyan pa'al, hataya shem poal, right? And then it gives you a definition in Hebrew. It gives you all sorts of other information. For example, various expressions that use the verb or other iterations of it. Then it will give you all sorts of other things. It will give you, if I were to click on it, for example, the first one, because that's what we want, it's going to give you the definition. It's going to give you adjectives, excuse me, synonyms, milim nirdafot shel lamad, synonyms for the verb lilmod, badak, bachan, birer, dagam, and so forth. Various expressions that's used with it. If there's any abbreviations for it, what it would look like. And then it's going to give you the full conjugation table. It's not as pretty as pelim.com, but it gives you every single possibility combination of not just its conjugation, but when you use prepositions as a prefix or conjugating it with words with extra letters at the end of it, it gives you every single option there is and how it's fully vocalized. Okay, this is a pretty powerful machine. Again, this is all in Hebrew, so it is going to test your Hebrew and your patience. And that's an important part when we're talking about language in general and using dictionaries. Okay, dictionaries are not a quick fix solution, which is why I tried to get you all weaned off Google Translate. Because Google Translate makes it seem easy and instant. It's not. If it's only giving you 50% of the meaning, if you're in a rush, that's fine to be in a rush when you need to learn something, when you need to figure out something. That's deciphering a language. That's not learning a language. If you're in a rush to pay your bill and you don't know what it means, first off, all bills in Israel are sent out at least 2 to 3 weeks before the due date. So there's no need to be in a rush. Second, we've gone through plenty of lessons that show context. It's the reason why When I teach you about how to read the news in Hebrew, I don't go word for word. I teach you the structure of the website or the newspaper we're looking at so you can go word for word if it's relevant to you. You can see the main words, you can figure out what's the topic sentence, where I need to follow, and if it's relevant, I can then go and translate in a much more micro situation. But context is always going to be your friend when we're talking about things as simple or supposedly simple, like paying your bill or reading the news, right? Again, same thing with translation services. I want to show you two more resources. Make sure I showed you all the major websites there is. I want to show you two print books. One that you probably know, one which is the one I've used all these years. First off, if you can get your hands on 501 Hebrew verbs, do so. Print, used, new, doesn't matter. Get a hold of this book, put it under your pillow at night. This is your best friend. Like Pe'alim.com, only in print. This is going to give you pages and pages of verb conjugation tables based on the shoresh, the three letters, right? So if I looked up lamad, it's going to give me the whole conjugation table, and I can go through according to the shoresh of a word. Once I figured out the shoresh of a word, I can look through this and quickly find out what's needed. Okay, 501, great word. The other one I've shown you before, but I want to show it to you what it looks like on screen, at least according to Amazon, is this guy. In Hebrew, it's called Rav Milon. In English, it's simply called a multi-dictionary. Rav at the beginning of a word, by the way, means multi. This is by far the best dictionary I've seen in print because this one will give you the word, it will give you all its grammatical details, it'll give you a sample sentence of the word. It has lists in the back by category, so words that you need for how to complain, what words to use at a post office, what words to use in the office, all sorts of great topics. It has conjugation tables in the back. It has conjugations of declensions, conjugations, however you want to call it, of prepositions, right? Because they take pronoun suffixes at the end. So if you want to know how to properly write with you in Hebrew, it's got the entire declension of the preposition im. This is a powerful dictionary that's in print. It is hard to find. It is no longer actively printed, but there are copies out there. Find a copy of this. Again, screenshot this. You'll see this in the recording. This is a great one, Loudon and Weinbach. You want this dictionary in your library if you can find it. It's often also in Judaica stores. Okay, so again, sum this all up, and I see we have a bunch of questions which I'm about to get to. Try to get yourselves off Google Translate. I've shown you several different options that are really good for individual words and to provide you with context. And also understand when I go to reach for a dictionary, when I go to open up Google Translate on my phone, why am I doing it? Is it an individual word that I'm totally lost in context? And if so, are one of those other translation tools also for free better than that? Or am I translating a whole long thing and then taking an important step back and saying, why am I translating this? Just because it's in print? Because I don't understand what's going on? Maybe there's a lesson already done on how to read your electric bill or how to read the news or something along those lines. Maybe I don't need to know every single word. Maybe I can just pick out the words I don't know and then go back to it. The point though is when you're learning a language, Google Translate is not your friend. And Hebrew, even more, is not your friend when it comes to Google Translate. And so, therefore, hopefully, we'll all laugh a little less at those terrible signs. Believe me, as part of my business, I've tried to help business owners in understanding human translation will always be best. But until I can win that war, I can at least convince all 300 plus of you on this call to seriously reconsider using Google Translate, if not because those other ones are just so much better. Okay, I see a number of questions in the Q&A. Anything in the chat, I will be looking at in the next few days as we get this recording to you, along with all of these resources. Um, Morphix is no longer available on the Google Play Store. It is, however, available. Just open it up your browser on your phone. It's very simple as that. Just because I showed it on the desktop, you don't have to use the app. Some of these websites have apps, some of them don't. They're all, though, accessible on your phone. You just, instead of finding the app, just go to the website. The browser works just as well, sometimes even better. By the way, folks, we've talked about this before. That is a great piece of advice for using any everyday tool like online banking and your Kupat Cholim, your healthcare services. Do not use the app if you are not fluent in Hebrew. If you use the website, you use Google browser, Google Chrome, or any browser on your phone, you'll more easily be able to translate things you can't get to. The app of these organizations, as much as they want you to use the app, number one, won't let you translate nearly as easy on the screen. And second, you don't have to use the app. It's as simple as that. Just because they offer it to you doesn't mean you have to use it as a prerequisite for getting their service. Good questions. Okay. Would a serious student find it worthwhile to pay for the ad-free site? What is your advice? It really depends on the service. Some of them track what you've done in the past in terms of what words. Some of them allow you to create vocabulary lists, in which case that might be very useful. But if it's going to be just sporadic looking up words here and there, I don't think you need to pay. But that's just my personal advice. It'll show you what you get before you sign up. Is Context Reverso free? Yes, it is. I recommend using it on your phone. It's just a little bit easier because it also has a lot of ads on computer, on a desktop. It's a little bit more awkward because of all the pop-up ads. What is the best way to practice speaking Hebrew? Find another Hebrew speaker. Find a native Hebrew speaker, and don't stop speaking in Hebrew, even if they go into English or any other language. We can talk about more of that in a future class, but that's definitely the case. Okay. I usually use Palim, but suddenly stopped working. Never happened to me before. Hopefully they're just going under some repair, folks. Hopefully there's nothing wrong with Palim.com because it's a great website, as you saw. Can you give an example of an idiom in Context Reverso? Absolutely. Let me show you Context Reverso again. Let me put this over here. Actually, let me close that. Got a lot of windows open here, folks. Okay. Okay. I am putting in the idiomatic expression in Hebrew, chai baseret. Okay. Chai baseret, chai, living. Seret is a film. Literally translates to he's living in a film. Okay, but if I put it in, it gives me several options. Live in a movie, that's the literal, as I just said, is in the movie, literal, or living in a fantasy, or delusional tripping on. That makes more sense, right? So let's say I type in this, right? אתה חי בסרט, אבא.
חי בסרט. אתה חי בסרט, אבא.
Wouldn't necessarily recommend speaking to a parent like that, but אתה חי בסרט, you live in a fantasy, dad. Live in a fantasy world, dad, right? That is an example of an idiom being better done by Context Reverso than other translation services. Let's give you another one. Let's see if it has ala panim in here. Let's try again. Oh, sorry, try this again. Panim. Okay, also doesn't seem to want to work. That's fine. It's stormy season here in Israel, folks. Connection isn't always going to be great, but as you just saw, even with Chai Baseret, it is able to translate idioms quite well. What happens if you don't understand what Milog says in Hebrew? Really great question there. Thank you for asking that. You saw I gave you multiple options, folks. I'm not telling you to use one or the other. I'm telling you not to use Google Translate nearly as much as you are. Milog is a great way to further boost your Hebrew because everything's in Hebrew, right? There's fewer better ways to learn a language than total immersion. Milog is the online version of that. If you don't like Milog, don't use it. I gave you several other options that are better for that. If you don't understand it, don't use it. Of all the apps mentioned, which would be the top of your list for a comprehensive dictionary and learning, like I said multiple times, Context Reverso. It is the absolute best one for words and expressions. Okay. And Context Reverso is also good because its input, its data input is also things like movies and TV, which are constantly being updated. So that's why it's also more updated than some of the other ones that we saw, but that's still going to be the best one. Do you have recommendations for dictionaries? I've already given those. I gave you two already, Context Reverso and the multi-dictionary print edition. Both have sample sentences. You saw that with, you just saw that with Context Reverso, in fact. What to do in the market, for example, wanting to read the labels. Google Translate has saved me multiple times. Wonderful. Okay. Google Translate has its pluses as well. It also has its minuses. Okay, Google Translate is on the fly. Like I said, deciphering a language. I have no time to spare. I'm in the store. I'm in a rush. I'm stressed out. I know Google Translate's worked for me in the past. I'm just going to hold up my phone or type it in myself and it works. That's deciphering a language, folks. That is not learning a language. I'm not judging you to decipher a language. We all have our own lives to do, but that is not learning a language. Okay, just holding up a phone, taking a picture of it. If I'm not able to internalize it, for example, by giving a sample sentence or using it very sparingly, if I'm using it for every single thing, it's not going to help me necessarily learn the language. If I need to translate Hebrew email into English, what is the best way to do that? Again, take the step back. Why are you getting emails in Hebrew that you are required to answer? If you've signed up for something, you should know what that signing up for is, and therefore already have a big chunk of the context to provide you to understand it so you don't have to go in and translate every single word. I want to give you all a lot more credit than you're giving yourselves, folks, all 300 plus of you. You have a lot of intuitive skills built into your brains you're not taking advantage of. And I want you to take advantage of because they're there. If you get an email from Klalit and you are signed up, your Kupat Cholim is Klalit, you already have a context as to why they would be emailing you. It's probably about something like Totzaot Abdikot, right? The test results that you just went in for. You're expecting those in the mail. Therefore, you can infer what it's for. If things are coming out of the blue in Hebrew for you, you can use tools like Google Translate. I'm just, again, deciphering versus learning. Sometimes deciphering can help us learn, but oftentimes in the situation we're at, it isn't necessarily the case. What languages, what language learning apps do you recommend? Rosetta Stone, Duolingo, others. Duolingo is good and not good. In Hebrew, it's actually pretty good, I have to say. Just like all languages, it has some pretty surreal sentences in there, but it's a pretty good tool also because it has so many levels to it. It's actually a better one. And again, if we're trying to save money or just think about that, Duolingo is pretty good for its free version. Some of the sample sentences in reversal context are not correctly translated. It's true. None of these are 100%, especially when they're free. But Context Reverso is still going to give you more options because of its database is much bigger than some of the others. Some requests on Clalit website refer me to the app. I've been in Israel now 17 and a half years. I have Clalit all this time. I've never needed to do a Clalit service that I couldn't use the website, whether it's on a desktop or on my phone. If they're telling you to go to the app, it's because they want you to sign up for the app, not because the service that you need is inherently dependent on the app. That goes for banks as well, folks. I have Bank Leumi. Bank Leumi has its own app. They desperately want me to sign up for the app. I don't need it. I can do online banking on the phone or through the browser on my phone or on Deskboard. There are very few instances you have to absolutely use the app of an organization. I don't know if this was covered, but is there an online translation that effectively translates to female as an option? Great question. That's a really good question. The default in Hebrew is always going to be male. That's why you saw when we saw the verb lilmod in that Hebrew to Hebrew dictionary, milog, it gave the default as lamad. All of these will recognize the female form when you type it in. So for example, let's go back to, hopefully it's working now, context reverso. Okay. Let's say I wrote, now it's working, I can see it, lomedet, right? It has all various options of lomedet, which is the singular feminine present tense of lilmod, lomedet, shani lomedet, adain lomedet, lomedet maher. These mean that these are all various entries in context reverso, right? Lomedet bebeit sefer, lomedet harbe, she'at lomedet. Let's just say I type lomedet, right? And then the sample sentences will also be in the gender you put in. So if you put in lomedet, the sample sentences will be in feminine as well. Okay, so again, really good free translation service here, and it recognizes gender. Okay, let's see some more questions. On the App Store, there is reversal context. Is that the correct one? Yes. Okay. What do you think about hearing the Hebrew words verbally from the various dictionaries? Are they realistic, and which is best? Context reverso, absolutely. That's what it sounds like when it's the right word. Again, it's not 100%. None of them are 100% because they're all using database to infer. These are all based on the computer learning how to use human language. That isn't always exactly right. It's the reason why Google Translate is also even worse, because Google Translate's default is not just learning a language as it gives you answers and it gets input. It translates everything into English, whether you want it or not. So for example, if you're going from Hebrew to Arabic, it's going to translate Hebrew to English to Arabic. So it's like the telephone gang, where at some point you're going to add, instead of the word lomedet, along the lines you're going to get to lomedet, you're going to get to learning purple monkey dishwasher, right? It's going to add all sorts of weird things in it because it's conjugating with translating from one too many languages. Okay. Do the other translation services work from a photo? I have to use the photo option in stores and when reading info on the doorway or entrance to a business. This is a great point, and I want to emphasize this part as well. Not just that we all have inference skills in our heads, how to read things in context, even if it's overwhelming. This is the other tool I'm going to give you for getting ready to speak in Hebrew on a regular basis, folks. Prepare in advance before you leave the house. If you are going to an electronics store, do some research on the various words that are connected to the appliance that you need and all the various constellations that go into buying that product. You don't need to go into a situation unprepared. I was not a Boy Scout, but be prepared is always my motto. I don't go into situations that I haven't at least psyched myself into going to, if not doing some initial research. So if I'm going to the grocery store and I have specific allergies, not just because I took our lesson a few weeks ago about what to look for, the words that indicate where the allergens are in it, I know what the word is in Hebrew. I looked it up ahead of time. I did the research and I know what questions to ask because I did some initial work on my own. I'm not going into a situation totally unprepared. I don't do that ever. First off, being a city boy, I always need to have my street face on, and that is including being prepared. Second, there's no reason why I can't prepare myself. So great that you can take a photo of thing and that Google Translate will give you 50% accuracy on it. The same tools can also be used to just prepare in advance. I'm going to a new situation. I'm going to a new place. Here are the words I need to look for, or I need to be able to ask if I don't know. That's my answer to the photo question. Again, Google Translate photo is great for deciphering. It is not necessarily great for learning. Do you have a recommendation for a plug-in Hebrew keyboard? I don't know if you mean a virtual one or a physical one. I simply bought one from KSP, which is one of the many appliance stores here in Israel. Any electronic store has one. This one is mobile. It's battery powered with a USB Bluetooth connector to my desktop. It's really good. But there's all sorts of other ones out there. Many websites have an onboard keyboard. If you have a PC, there's the on-screen keyboard, which is in your control panel. If you're an Apple person, you do you. If having a conversation with someone in Hebrew, is there an app to translate it into English? First off, I just showed you the audio component of things like Google Translate. But second off, again, take a step back, deciphering versus learning. You're speaking to someone, not interviewing them, not hearing them from afar. You're speaking one-on-one with someone and you hold up your phone like this for them to talk. Maybe that's okay when you're a tourist someplace. I personally, in terms of my own interpersonal skills, I don't think that's comfortable. I would rather work out some basic, certainly Hebrew, and if I'm really stuck, I use Google Translate. Last resort is Google Translate. Okay, see a couple other questions and answers I'm trying to get to here. A comprehensive dictionary of idioms and proverbs. There are some great Hebrew dictionaries out there. One of my absolute favorites is Milon HaSlang HaMakif. I've shared it with you before. It's the comprehensive slang dictionary in Hebrew. It's from 2005, and obviously needs to be updated, but it's still got great input in there. Again, you go to the reference section of any bookstore here in Israel, and you'll find dictionaries. They won't be what we're talking about here, but just Hebrew to Hebrew can also be a really great resource, like I showed you Milog. What's the best way to learn the rules of Hebrew, i.e. ayin when it's uo or a, or vav being u or o or v sound? Great question. We have several lessons about that on our YouTube station about vowels, spelling rules, about the trickiness of modern Hebrew in that respect. A couple great lessons up there. Are you familiar with Drop as a language journal? I don't know about Drop. From Kahoot. Write to us at hebrew@nbn.org.il. I'd love to see more about that. Send me your recs. If you have other online translation tools, please send it to us. We'll be happy to look them over. What about watching a Hebrew movie with English subtitles? Is that a good way to learn Hebrew? Both ways. Hebrew with English subtitles so that you can hear the audio. Audio is important when we're learning a language, obviously, but also to hear the tempo, the flow, the rhythm of a language is really important. We've talked about that before, about nonverbal communication in Hebrew, about pitch and tone. That's an integral part of Hebrew, just like it is in English and other languages. That's a great way to learn. The other great way is simply watching a Hebrew language show with Hebrew subtitles. That's often taped segments on the news, not the live aspects, but the taped parts. A lot of taped shows have Hebrew subtitles for that reason as well. Where can you translate an entire section other than Google Translate? A lot of the AI-powered translation tools online allow you to put in block text like that one I showed you. However, again, they aren't necessarily great. Okay. See a few others here. Okay, we are unfortunately out of time. I hope this was helpful. I am going to go on a rant in the future. Don't worry about why Google Translate is bad. But I hope you all bookmark this lesson. It'll go online in the next day or so on YouTube. It'll have all the links to all the various websites I showed you now. You have several new options for looking up words, and hopefully getting you off Google Translate as your default choice and showing you one of many ways it doesn't work when learning Hebrew. Deciphering Hebrew, maybe. Learning, no. With that, toda rabah, thank you all for joining. See you all next week. Apropos learning a language and grammar, next week we're going to talk about sentence structure in Hebrew. As much as it seems very steadfast, Hebrew, it can be, modern Hebrew in particular, can be very fluid in sentence structure. When I talk about sentence structure, subject, object, verb. Maybe it's verb, subject, object. Or sometimes it's even object, subject, verb, or object, verb, subject. We're going to talk about all the different versions we can find in modern Hebrew of how a sentence is structured. And we're going to do it not just by looking at examples, but we're going to look at a piece of music, because you know, I always like to bring in contemporary Israeli culture. One of the biggest hits in the last 122 days since the start of this war. You've probably heard the song before. You probably haven't paid attention to the lyrics. The lyrics are not just very powerful, they're a great insight into how flexible Hebrew can be. So with that, toda rabah, thank you all for joining. This lesson will be up on YouTube and in your email in the next day or so. Until then, toda rabah, thank you all for joining, and lehitrot. See you all very soon. Take care.